I wasn't actually going to share this, but I will. Sue doesn't even know I was going to share this. One of the things I don't know that she remembers is that at my wedding 32 years ago, I had some friends that were supposed to take care of the cake, and they did not know how to do that. And she stepped up and she took care of the cake to feed everybody. But anyway, and so it is my pleasure to be here, and I just wanted to sort of give you a little bit of background on us. I have worked with a lot of nonprofit organizations in various forms, and I've also obviously been the recipient of the benefits from nonprofits. And so we all know whenever you're involved in a nonprofit, whether or not the work is as a director, as a volunteer, as a donor, it's a lot of work. There's so much focus on things you have to do, what programs, what are we going to do for fundraisers, what are we going to do here, revenue generation, all of that. And sometimes we get so caught up in what we have to do for the organization, sometimes we forget why we got into the organization to begin with. And so what I wanted to do is kind of give you a little bit of background in our story. So our story started when my daughter was 3 years old. And she, a sunsuit strap actually had hit her in the eye. Didn't think anything about it. And I need to go back a little bit. It hit her in the eye because Sarah was not a standstill, quiet little child. Sarah was a rambunctious little child who I was constantly saying, stand still. But anyway, so her eye continued to water. We went to the MAC. They gave her drops, no big deal. Eye continued to water. We called the doctor. They gave her drops, no big deal. Go to the emergency room. They give her drops, no big deal. Finally, the doctor says we have to send her to a specialist. So we go to a specialist, and they look at her, and they say, well, we're going to try some different drops. So they try different drops. And we go back, and it gets worse. They put her under anesthetic. The last time they put her under anesthetic, they say, something's wrong. We can't, since we can't see in, she can't see out. We're going to send her to Indianapolis. So they send us to a place in Indianapolis. Indianapolis takes a look at her. They said immediately she has to have a cornea transplant. And they said, we have to do it now. And I said, I want a second opinion. Because, I mean, we waited this long. It wasn't something I was going to jump into just like that. They said, it can't wait. They had said she would be in a body cast for 6 months. Now, she's 3 years old. And to have a cornea transplant. So I said no. So we ended up getting a second opinion from Barnes Children's Hospital. They said she very well may need a cornea transplant, but we have to find out what caused it, because if we do a transplant and we don't know what the cause is, we're wasting our time. So they ended up running a bunch of tests. Come find out what had happened is it was a part of the chickenpox virus. The chickenpox virus usually will come up in the form of a fever blister after you've had chickenpox. In her case, it rerouted. So, long story short, yes, we did have to schedule a transplant. She had gone completely blind in her right eye. This was causing pressure on her left eye. So we go in and we have to be put on a donor list. And so we're on the donor list. There was, at that time, there was a 7-day wait from transplant, from harvest to transplant. And so we got the call that we had a donor. And we had to leave on a Friday night. No, I'm sorry. We got the call on a Friday night. We had to leave for the surgery on Monday. And we had to be there on Monday morning. Her donor was 18 years old. And that was the youngest. They wanted it because her cornea is always going to be 18 years older. And so, of course, all the way up to St. Louis, or over to St. Louis, depending on where you're from. All the way, I'm boo-hooing, you know, the mommy thing, you know, why her, why her, why her, you know, what happened and all this kind of thing. So we get up there and we go into this big waiting room, and there's all these parents. Kids are having heart transplants, lung transplants, kidney transplants. And the parents are just talking, and they're eating donuts and waiting for the phone to ring, and I'm like, what in the world? And they're going around telling what their kids had, and you know, well, this is our second kidney, and this is our, you know, our heart transplant. And they're just so relaxed, and they get around to me, and they're like, what's your daughter having? And I said, it's just an eye thing, you know, because the magnitude, they didn't know if their kids were going to come out alive. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, and so there's all these emotions and all of this. Well, we had to be up there so many times that by the 6th or 7th time that I'm in the waiting room, I'm eating donuts and letting somebody else answer the phone. And it just becomes that way. The nurses get to know you, the doctors get to know you. And so the hospital got to know her as Little Spirit, not in a religious kind of way. It was Little Spirit because she was pretty rambunctious, and she would have to have medicine, and they would have to put her under anesthetic because she was so young she couldn't hold still for them to check. And they would say, Sarah, do you want bubblegum, cherry, or grape? Sleeping medicine. And she learned about that real quick, and she didn't want any CP medicine. No CP medicine, period. And she knew the balloon trick. Hey, watch the balloon go. No, she knew that one. So, there were a lot of things that went on with that. But we were told that the hope was that she would be able to tell a cat from a dog. Today she has 20/40 vision. She drives, and she is a miracle. So how does this come full circle back to the Lions Club? In all of this adventure, I found out that the Lions Club actually funds eye banks. So when you have a transplant for the corneas or retinas or whatever it has to do with the vision part, those eye banks are funded in great part by the Lions Club. And definitely. And in addition to the other things that they do is what's special to me is the eyeglass program that you have. The thought that there's someone out there that their vision could be improved with a pair of eyeglasses, man, that is just something to really be proud of, because that is not a large gesture. And when you can contribute to that and make a difference in that, that's everything. And so she went from running into walls and not being able to see and having a tough time with sun and everything. Will she have challenges? Sure, we all have challenges. She has chosen to go above those challenges and compensate where she has to compensate for. And so she went on. For a child who wasn't supposed to be able to tell a dog from a cat, she reads music, she composes music, and she reads. She's an avid reader, and she does all of these things that she was never supposed to do. And so as this comes back, what I want all of you here that are part of this organization, I want you to give yourselves a pat on the back, because of everybody here and the Lions Club in itself, people like my daughter have a great future in store for them. So the next time you feel like you're just, there's just so much pressure on the things you have to do, stop and think and really recognize the value of what you're doing. Because from my family to you, thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce my daughter, Sarah.
So I'm not going to talk very much. I will be playing a few Christmas tunes that I'm sure most of you will recognize.